Well, what we saw on Friday was a very dangerous decision from the pretrial chamber of the ICC. It was profoundly misguided. If what the pretrial chamber claims it wanted to do was bolster the credibility of the International Criminal Court and operate in the interests of justice, including the interests of victims, it went in the opposite direction. The only people who could be applauding this decision, frankly, are Donald Trump and John Bolton. You had victims groups from Afghanistan, victims representations of individuals who were detained as part of the U.S. torture program, file victims representations on behalf of tens of thousands of people. Back in the winter of 2017, 2018, Afghan civil society groups literally risked their lives to collect victims' representations, to say, make this investigation go forward, end impunity. The same happened in my case of getting victims' representations from two men who continue to be detained in Guantanamo. We all said that this investigation is in the interests of justice, and the pretrial chamber, bizarrely, frankly, said it is not. One can only conclude that this is the result of some serious political pressure by the United States, including not only on the court, but member states of the court.
Well, I want to ask you about the implications there. It's not just the Trump administration, but clearly some former Bush officials like Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld are also glad these days of this decision. But what's the implication of the ability of the U.S. government to effectively intimidate an international body like this?
And that's precisely why it's such a dangerous decision. It sends the message that bullying works. So whether for Russia, who right now is looking to be investigated for Georgia and Ukraine, whether for Israel, of course, Palestine joined the ICC. This says obstruct and you will be rewarded with impunity. So I think for the member states, of whom there are 122, who believe in international justice, they need to send the clear message, we back the court and this investigation should proceed. First of all, it's true the United States is not a member state of the ICC. The reason why individuals can come within the jurisdiction of the court is because the U.S. chose to operate on the territory of member states. It chose to set up black sites, detention centers, commit acts of torture. So it has brought itself, through its actions of a global rendition and torture program, into the purview of the ICC. In terms of responses from the court, we did see statements made, but I frankly don't think we saw a strong enough response from member states. That includes those states in Eastern Europe, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania, and the other European states, or Jordan, or Djibouti, states that are implicated in ways of furthering the torture program. What did they say to the ICC prosecutor? Did they pledge their support? That, I think, is something that we want to see happen if this appeal, which we understand the prosecutor will be filing, will go forward. And in terms of U.S. officials, you mentioned Dick Cheney and George Bush, there's George Tenet. These are all individuals who could be within the scope of the investigation. There's also Gina Haspel. She's a person who ran a black site, not in Afghanistan as far as we know, but she is now the head of the CIA for a president who we've seen time and time again does not believe in the rule of law and believes that he is above the law. So when he has Gina Haspel running the CIA right now, we have to ask what is happening in other countries around the world. What is it that they don't want investigated? These are not crimes only of the past. And if you ask Afghan civil society, they will say this also gives a green light to the Taliban. The purported reason for why the U.S. went to endless war in Afghanistan was to protect Afghan civilians. And with this decision, it's done the absolute opposite. It's empowered impunity and empowered warlords.